So my niece suggests she wants to build a barn supported by old telephone poles. Would I want to help? I said, fine, figuring in the back of my mind, no way she gets old telephone poles. But a couple of months later, she has her husband and kids putting poles in.
Boys and my boys.
With poles up, we would need a way to attach a floor to them. With a pandemic in full swing, material was going to be an issue. But my niece had already acquired several hundred feet of 2x6, so I decided I could construct beams using 5 pieces in a modified I-beam construction. We would need 37-foot long beams to span front to back, so it would require splicing 2 on each side. We wanted the floor to be 14 feet high, but how to cut a notch for the beam? Using some of the 2x6 material, we made a freestanding tower structure to give us a work platform 11 feet high. Technically it was mobile, but it took 4 of us to move. Unfortunately, the extremely hard ground meant the poles were not very deep. This meant using temporary bracing to keep the poles up during construction. Using block and tackle and some youthful manpower, the first section was lifted in place and bolted to the poles. This was repeated for the second, and the 2 were bolted together. Now I wanted to tie the back 2 poles together and provide bracing, so we built a custom truss. To install this, we would need a second construction tower. With a little engineering, I made it much stronger and lighter than the first. Turns out, because of COVID, getting floor joists was going to take a long time. Going online, my niece found a source for 14 foot at a very good price. But since our poles were 18 feet apart, no go. But front to back, the poles were only 12 feet apart. So we built a 6 by 14 inch box beam with bracing to allow it to span 18 feet and allow the use of the shorter joist front to back. Prior to putting in the I-joist, we completed our stairs up to the floor level. At the time, these were stairs to nowhere. But once we hung a back porch onto the rear of the structure, they provided easy access to the floor level.
There you go. Oh, darn.
No, it doesn't go that high. I just was trying to get past that. Okay, remember, too high. I know, we have to go back down. We have to go down.
here we are videoing this, and we have 2 pieces of floor down. That's why I feel comfortable standing here. And we have a handrail. We'll see where we go tomorrow.
As luck would have it, she then stumbled onto a source with 20-plus foot eye joist, which could easily span the 18-foot side to side. So the next 24 feet have eye joist perpendicular to the first ones. But how to get 18-foot long joist 14 feet in the air? Easy. We made custom forks for a tractor and lifted them up. As joists were added, so was the plywood flooring. By July, we had a floor hovering 14 feet in the air. As we prepared to build on top of the floor, my sister wisely pointed out that we would need some kind of scaffolding to access the walls from both sides. And it would be better to make it permanent so that you would always be able to maintain the exterior of the structure. So, I designed a maintenance walk that would hang on the outside of the poles just a few inches lower than the main floor. Once the walk was built, the walls could be raised. The first segment between the back 2 poles would have a loft and be 2 feet higher than the front 2/3. With winter around the corner, we decided to push ahead and have this section built and roofed. With help from my son, we got this section of roof up, sheathed, and 30-pound felt installed. We then raised the rest of the side walls and began building the lower roof. Of course, we then had some early wet weather and had to proceed under tarp. About a week later, with a nice break between storms, we built the front porch deck. This involved 2 more poles, 6 feet in front of the structure, and a deck. This allowed raising the final wall and completing the rafters. With a few days of all hands on deck, we were able to finish the lower roof and get tar paper installed. Christmas Day, we sealed the front deck before heading out for Christmas dinner. The mild weather allowed us to wrap the building and installed most of the windows. Access to the upper storage loft would need a ladder, or even better, stairs. But there wasn't enough room for stairs. So I kind of designed and built a hybrid and compensated for the lost space by making the underside storage compartments. Unfortunately, the lower roof had been papered with 15-pound felt instead of 30-pound, and obtaining the metal for the roof had taken longer than hoped. It had kept the inside pretty dry, but no longer looked so good. So, when the metal did come, we were able to install it immediately on the upper roof, but the paper on the lower roof had to be replaced. Getting the lower roof covered in metal kept slipping behind other work obligations. So, in an effort to keep the new roofing paper from weathering from sun and rain, a tarp was used. With a little help from my son, while my niece's family was fulfilling work obligations, I installed a stained glass window, which came from a pizza parlor my wife and I had owned in Big Bear Lake. And began installing metal siding. Ultimately, the tarp kept the second round of felt intact, and the roof and siding metal were successfully installed. Next up was closing the back end of the building, closing it up with plywood and installing the rear window. And then at the front of the building, installing the glass windows to close that end of the construction. Much work remains inside, but our focus is moving to the build out of the side roofs to provide the area for horse stalls, which is, of course, the central purpose of a barn. With the 8 poles in the ground, the next video should show completion of the horsey part of the barn, as well as the build-out of the upstairs area.